A new poll shows nearly 3/4 of Republicans are ready to close the books on the January 6th insurrections. A new Quinnipiac poll shows 74% of Republicans say it's time to move on. That's compared to 84.
Wait, hold on a second. So let's see here. It's May 28th.
Yeah.
This is what? How many months? 4 months? 5 months after the insurrection? Mm-hmm. What if in? I'm wondering, Gene Robinson. What if in like January of 2002, Democrats said, you know what? We need to just move past 9/11.
Yeah. Just move past it. Nothing to see here. It's incredible. It's just another example of the sort of fantasy world, dystopian fantasy world that the Republican Party is living in now. And, they don't want to think about that because that was a bad thing for them and a bad thing for their guy who incited the whole thing, Donald Trump. And so let's just pretend it never happened. It's astonishing for one of our two major political parties to have lost its mind to that extent.
Yeah. If the tables were turned, they'd be telling the truth and also pointing out how this weakens us around the world, especially our national security, a weakness from within that they could promulgate and grow. It's compared to 84% of Democrats and 54% of independents who say the events of that day should never be forgotten. That 74% was likely what was behind a marathon session in the Senate overnight as Republicans stalled a crucial vote on the January 6th commission. Republicans were on the Senate floor until just before 3 this morning, debating an unrelated bill to delay the vote. Now the vote isn't expected until possibly later today. 60 votes are needed for the independent January 6th commission to move forward. So far, only 3 Republicans, 3, have expressed their support. Senator Lisa Murkowski, the only Republican backing the January 6th commission bill as is, and she expressed her disappointment in her colleagues' attempts to block the vote.
It's important that there be a focus on the facts and on the truth, and that may be unsettling, but we need to understand that. We just can't pretend that nothing bad happened or that people just got too excitable. Something bad happened, and it's important to lay that out. I think there's more to be learned. I want to know more, and I want to know and I don't want to know. I don't want to know, but I need to know.
There's so much to find out, and there's so much misinformation out there that some of the misinformation is easily dismissed, where you have people saying on the Trump right that it was Antifa. It clearly was not Antifa, and none other than Kevin McCarthy screamed and swore at Donald Trump as the insurrection was going down, saying this is not Antifa. What do you think, stupid? These are your people here. Yeah. These are your people here. So that lie continues to spread, of course, throughout the Trump right. And there are other lies. It was just really just sort of peaceful demonstrators, nothing to see here. The Ron Johnson claim, there was really nothing to be worried about, while police officers were being beaten and brutalized within an inch of their lives. So you have that part of it, too. Mike Allen, what I don't really understand is, you and I both, we've been around the Hill long enough. We know that a lot of times leadership will say, hey, listen, Joe, you know what, would like to have your vote here. This is a vote of conscience. So you do what you want to do, but that happens a lot of times in votes like this. And certainly Mitch McConnell said that during impeachment. Vote of conscience, you do what you feel like you need to do. What I don't understand is what has changed. Why is Mitch McConnell, based on reporting, all the reporting I've seen, Mitch McConnell's telling Republicans, I need your vote. I need your vote. What is it about this commission that he fears? Why is it that he's instead of just saying vote your conscience like he did on impeachment, why is he now doing everything short of demanding their support?
Joe, it's a little tough to compete with Zapruder baseball. But if you look at this, there's two things going on here. And, with Senator McConnell, he's thinking about one thing. He's thinking, how can I rebuild my majority? How am I going to recruit the candidates that I need to get back the Senate majority, looking ahead to next cycles? And so something that most of the Republicans that you served with and that we've covered over the years, this would seem like a no-brainer. You've pointed out again and again on the show why this commission is needed. But this is one of the ones where they're whipping and pushing as opposed to vote your conscience. And we have a little new reporting on possible fallout from this vote. So Senator Joe Manchin, everybody's trying to read his mind. And he's been very strong in saying that Republicans should be for this commission. We've talked to some Democrats who think that this expected vote by Republicans trying to kill this commission, that's a new wedge that Democrats can use with Manchin to say to him, you're being schooled, you're being played by Republicans. They are not voting, arguing in good faith here. This commission is proof of it. And because of that, you should soften your view on the filibuster, move toward a Senate where Democrats can get their way in a 50-50 Senate, Vice President Harris breaking the tie, instead of right now where you need 10 Republicans to get something real.
Yeah, and Joe Manchin's going to be hearing a lot of that, but he's been Sherman-esque in saying that he doesn't want to, quote, destroy the government by getting rid of the filibuster. I don't think. I think that's being a little melodramatic.
Joe,
I don't think. Go ahead.
Yeah, Joe, at the time he said that, he's still holding out hope for some Republican movement. And so if you get no movement past that graphic that you showed, that's where there's an opening to say to Joe Manchin, look, this is a pipe dream. You're going to get Republicans on these big questions. Give it up. Let's pass things that we believe in and need to for our voters.
Yeah, Jonathan Lemire, I'm trying to remember who said this yesterday. I think it was Senator Bennett said nobody hates Donald Trump more than Mitch McConnell. He's probably right there. And so it leads me, obviously, if you looked at what Mitch McConnell said on January the 6th, if you saw what Mitch McConnell said about impeachment, do what you feel like you need to do on impeachment. If you saw what he said after his vote on impeachment, it's very clear he doesn't like Donald Trump. Anything he's doing is not to protect Donald Trump. I'm just wondering, again, for those who are trying to figure out why is the Republican leader in the Senate doing this, I'm just wondering if the whole thing is let's get Donald Trump behind us. I don't want to spend the next year and a half figuring out how much Donald Trump was laughing at the White House when he was seeing pictures of cops being beaten up with an American flag. I don't want to be, having to answer for Donald Trump not calling the National Guard in fast enough. Just, Republicans having to answer that question day in and day out as they move through 2021 and into 2022, because this would go into 2022, regardless of what the legislation says, because that a lot of people being subpoenaed would fight those subpoenas.
Right. And as much as Senator McConnell may dislike Donald Trump, he likes more the idea of being Senate Majority Leader again. And that's what he's making a calculation here. He's trying to win. He thinks this is best for the Republicans in the Senate. This is the best move for his caucus because of exactly what you said, Joe, that he doesn't want this to turn into a months-long, potentially years-long odyssey with more revelations, keeping January 6th in the news, being more damaging. We have learned, we have seen this just from that date itself, that every time we see a new piece of video, every time we hear from a new witness, including in a test we heard yesterday from the mother of the Capitol police officer who was killed there. It is so heart-wrenching. It's such a difficult day. Those are not headlines that are good for the Republicans, who had senators object to the election results. And, of course, that violence was incited by the former president. So that's the calculation McConnell has made to try to block this, to try to move forward. We know Speaker Pelosi, as we've been discussing on the show for weeks now, has other options. It could be a select committee, could be the power of the subpoena. But the Republicans objections to this is what led to last night when Senator Ron Johnson, who, as you mentioned, is the one who said he'd be far more worried if it was Black Lives Matter protesters storming the Capitol as opposed to this pro-Trump riot. He's the one who held up the proceedings, didn't get to votes on things like China and other measures, including January 6th, because he was trying to pull a stunt about the border wall. So the Republicans, again, they're taking their orders from Mitch McConnell, but really it all exists under the shadow of Donald Trump. That's still what they're concerned about because of the grip he has on the party.